All right, so we're diving into Atomic Habits today.
Yeah.
You shared a really popular YouTube summary of the book.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be fun to kind of unpack some of the ideas in it together and,
Sure.
see what we can learn from it.
Sounds great.
As you probably know, the main idea is that tiny changes, consistently applied, can really add up to something pretty big over time.
Absolutely. It's all about harnessing the power of compounding.
Yeah.
And it's much like compound interest,
Yeah.
The idea is that small, seemingly insignificant actions,
Right.
when repeated consistently over time, can lead to this dramatic impact over time. It's quite fascinating.
The YouTube video used the example of the British cycling team, and I thought that was so interesting.
Oh, yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
And it really illustrates this principle in action.
So what's so interesting about that story?
Well, what's interesting is that they didn't implement this radical change overnight.
Right.
Instead, they focused on making what they called marginal gains, getting 1% better in every single facet of their training and preparation. For instance, they used biofeedback sensors to optimize each rider's sleep position, recognizing the impact of rest on performance.
Oh, wow. Just that little tweak
Yeah.
made a difference.
Yeah, it can make a surprising difference. Yeah.
Did they do other things like that?
They did. They did all sorts of things. They experimented with different massage gels to reduce muscle fatigue.
Oh, wow.
And believe it or not, they went as far as painting the inside of their team truck white to more easily spot dust particles,
Okay.
which ensured that their bikes were always meticulously clean.
Oh, wow. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, and these seemingly minor adjustments, when combined across every area of their training, created this significant cumulative advantage.
It's amazing to me how those small changes, things you wouldn't even think of, can add up to such a dramatic shift in performance.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder what other kind of hidden opportunities there are for those 1% improvements in other areas of life.
Yeah, it really highlights how often we underestimate the cumulative impact of these small changes. However, the reverse is also true.
Yeah.
If we allow ourselves to get 1% worse each day, the decline can be equally dramatic.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a double-edged sword.
It is. Yeah.
So I guess applied to our own lives.
Yeah.
Even those, tiny changes we often just dismiss can actually make a huge impact on our progress over time.
That's precisely it.
Yeah.
It challenges us to really rethink our approach to personal growth and how we achieve our goals.
Okay.
Encouraging us to focus on building systems of consistent small improvements.
Okay.
Rather than searching for those quick fixes or grand gestures.
Right, because those don't really work in the long run.
No, they don't.
Okay, so then that brings up the question of, if they're so powerful,
Yeah.
why do we struggle so much to just embrace them?
Right.
Why are we so drawn to those?
That's a great question.
Quick fixes and overnight transformations instead.
Well, likely because our brains are wired for instant gratification. We crave immediate results.
Right.
But Atomic Habits, as you know, they're all about playing the long game. And that requires a different mindset.
Yeah.
One that values patience and consistency over that instant reward.
So it's almost like we need to retrain our thinking.
In a way, yeah.
To be able to appreciate the power of those seemingly insignificant daily actions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it is a long game.
It is.
But it sounds like it's worth it.
It absolutely is.
Okay.
And it's not just about embracing those good habits. It's also about recognizing how those small negative habits, the ones we often dismiss as insignificant, can actually compound over time and derail us without us even realizing it.
Could you give me an example of what you mean?
Oh, sure. Think about something like hitting that snooze button every morning.
Oh, yeah.
It seems harmless enough in the moment, right?
Right.
But over time, those extra few minutes of sleep,
they can disrupt your sleep cycle, leaving you feeling groggy and less productive throughout the day.
That's true.
Or consider, the habit of mindlessly scrolling through social media.
Oh, yeah.
It might seem like a harmless way to unwind.
Sure.
But those minutes can quickly turn into hours, stealing time and energy away from more meaningful activities.
I think we've all fallen into those traps.
Oh, absolutely.
Where those seemingly small negative habits end up having a much bigger impact than we initially realized.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes the importance of being mindful of our daily choices, recognizing that even those seemingly insignificant actions can have this ripple effect, shaping our lives in these profound ways over time.
This brings us to another interesting point that the YouTube summary made,
Okay.
which is that it's not just about setting goals.
Yeah.
It's about creating systems for lasting change.
It's a crucial distinction.
Okay.
While goals give us a direction to move toward.
It's the system, the collection of daily habits and routines that actually drives our progress.
So it's not just about saying, I want to lose 20 pounds.
Right.
It's about building a system of healthy eating and exercise.
Exactly.
That makes it almost inevitable that you'll achieve that goal.
You got it.
Okay.
It's not about forcing yourself to change overnight. It's more about designing a system that naturally supports the changes you want to make.
Okay, so that's a helpful way to think about it.
It is.
I think it takes some of the pressure off.
Yeah.
To shift the focus from willpower.
Right.
To creating a supportive environment for change.
Right.
And I'm curious about what role identity plays in building those effective systems.
Yeah.
Because the video mentioned that too.
Yeah, this is where things get really fascinating.
Okay.
The YouTube summary highlighted how our habits shape our identity, even more so than the other way around.
Okay, so instead of trying to change our habits directly, we should focus on changing who we believe we are.
In a way, yes. It's the difference between someone who's trying to read more
Right.
and someone who identifies as a reader.
Hmm.
You see, when a habit becomes part of our identity, it's no longer something we have to force ourselves to do. It's simply who we are.
Right, and that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And the video shared a great anecdote about this entrepreneur who always bit his nails.
Oh, yeah.
And he tried everything to stop, and he couldn't.
Right. And he had this epiphany, and he decided to just schedule a manicure.
Wow.
That's all he did.
Okay.
And by doing so, he shifted his identity from someone who bites their nails to someone who takes care of their nails.
Wow.
And the habit disappeared effortlessly.
That's an incredibly powerful example of how a simple shift in mindset can lead to real change.
It is. It is.
And it suggests that instead of focusing on breaking bad habits, we should try to cultivate new identities
Yes.
that naturally support the habits we desire.
You got it.
It's all about aligning our actions with who we want to become.
That's the core idea. And it's a much more sustainable approach to change.
Than simply relying on willpower or motivation.
I'm starting to see how this all kind of connects together now.
Yeah.
By understanding the power of those tiny changes, building systems, instead of fixating on goals and aligning our habits with our desired identity, we can create lasting change that feels almost effortless.
Exactly.
And speaking of understanding, the YouTube summary also mentions something called the habit loop.
Oh, yeah. The habit loop.
And I'm curious to learn more about that.
Well, the habit loop is this framework for understanding how habits are formed.
Okay.
And more importantly, how we can leverage this knowledge to create positive habits
Okay.
and break those negative ones. There are 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward.
Can you give me a real-life example of how that works?
Sure. Let's consider the all-too-common example of checking your phone.
Oh, yeah.
So the cue might be a notification sound or, just the sight of your phone lying there on the table.
Then comes the craving, the desire to, be in the loop, to see what's new, or maybe to just escape boredom or discomfort.
Yeah.
The response is the act of picking up the phone and checking it.
Okay.
And finally, the reward, that hit of dopamine.
Yeah.
That feeling of being connected, entertained, or informed,
Yeah.
even if it's just fleeting.
It's amazing how this operates without us even really realizing it.
Oh, it really does.
It influences our actions without us even realizing it.
Absolutely it does, but by understanding this loop,
Right.
we can actually start to take control of our habits
Okay.
rather than letting them control us.
Right. So instead of being a slave to our cravings, we can use that knowledge to our advantage.
Exactly.
It's almost like hacking our brains
You got it.
to create the habits we want.
Exactly.
Right.
It's all about understanding those mechanisms
Right.
at play and then using them to shape our behaviors in a way that aligns with our goals and values.
That makes so much sense.
Good, good.
Okay. And then it seems like our environment plays a big role in this as well.
It does. It does.
The YouTube summary mentioned this really fascinating study at Mass General Hospital
Yeah.
that focused on this.
Yeah, the cafeteria study.
What was so interesting about that research?
Well, what's fascinating about that research is they simply rearranged the cafeteria.
Okay.
They made the water more visible and they made it more readily available.
Okay.
They placed healthier snacks in more prominent locations.
Okay.
And so on.
And did people resist that?
Not at all.
Oh.
People just started eating and drinking more healthily without any direct persuasion or education.
Wow.
It was a simple nudge, a change in their environment that led to these significant shifts in behavior.
So it really highlights how much our surroundings influence our choices,
Absolutely.
even without us consciously realizing it.
Absolutely. We are creatures of our environment.
It seems like we're much more susceptible to that than we like to think.
I think we are.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes the importance of designing our spaces. Right.
In a way that supports those desired habits.
Okay.
You know, maybe it's time to take a look at your own environment and just see what little tweaks you can make.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to rearrange the furniture, declutter the workspace, rethink the snack drawer.
It's amazing
Yeah.
how much potential for positive change lies in simply adjusting our surroundings.
Right. It's not just about willpower or motivation. It's about creating an environment that sets us up for success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the power of context and using it to our advantage.
And while we're on the topic of making those positive habits stick,
Yeah.
the YouTube summary also highlighted James Clear's 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
Those are great.
Yeah.
Those are great.
So let's unpack those a little bit.
Oh.
What do those actually mean in practical terms?
Sure. So these laws provide a really practical framework for building better habits.
Right.
Let's say, for example, you want to read more.
To make it obvious, keep a book on your bedside table,
Go.
where you just can't miss it.
Okay. And then how do you make it attractive?
You could pair reading with a cozy blanket and a cup of tea.
Oh, I like that.
Right, making it a more pleasurable experience.
So it's not just about the reading itself. It's about creating a whole ritual around it.
Precisely.
Yeah, I like that.
You're associating positive feelings with the habit, making it something you look forward to rather than dread.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we've got obvious and attractive covered.
Yeah.
How about making it easy?
Ah, yes,
Because sometimes just starting a new habit can feel so daunting.
it can. It can.
Yeah.
So to make reading easier, just commit to 1 page a day.
Okay, just start small.
Just start small.
Okay.
Yeah. That removes the pressure of feeling like you need to, read for hours on end.
Right.
And it makes it much more approachable.
Okay, so starting small really does make it feel less overwhelming. Okay, and finally, how do we make it satisfying?
Well, you want to actually enjoy the process, right?
Right.
So maybe you reward yourself with something enjoyable afterward,
Well,
like watching your favorite show or taking a relaxing bath.
Right.
The key is to reinforce the habit with those positive feelings, making it something that you want to repeat.
Okay, so it's like you're turning the habit into a positive feedback loop where the reward actually motivates you to continue.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
And speaking of motivation, the YouTube summary also mentioned a technique called pointing and calling. That sounded interesting.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one.
Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. Pointing and calling is actually a technique borrowed from the Japanese railway system.
Really?
Yeah, and it involves physically pointing and verbally calling out the actions that you're about to take.
So if I want to, let's say, reduce my phone use,
Yeah,
I would literally point at my phone and say, I'm putting my phone away now.
that's it. You got it.
That's so
That
interesting.
might sound a little silly.
Yeah. But this deliberate action brings that behavior into conscious awareness.
Okay.
And it disrupts those automatic patterns that often lead to, those mindless actions.
Right, right.
So it's a simple but powerful way to kind of increase self-awareness and regain control over our habits.
It seems counterintuitive that something so simple could actually be effective.
Yeah, it does, but it is.
But I'm willing to give it a try.
Yeah,
Because sometimes it's those unexpected techniques that really make the biggest difference.
you're absolutely right.
And the YouTube video also suggested a strategy called the paperclip strategy
Oh, yeah.
to stay motivated when building new habits.
Yeah, the paperclip strategy. I love that one.
Can you tell me how that works?
Sure. So it's really simple yet effective technique to visualize your progress.
Okay.
You have 2 jars,
Okay.
one empty and one filled with paper clips.
Okay.
Each time you successfully complete your desired habit,
Okay.
you move a paper clip from the full jar to the empty jar.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and so you can see that pile of paper clips grow in the success jar,
Right.
which can be incredibly motivating.
Yeah, I can see how that would be.
It provides a visual reminder of how those small, consistent actions are adding up over time.
Yeah, it's like gamifying the process
It is.
of habit formation.
It is.
And I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah,
especially for people that are visually motivated.
absolutely.
And speaking of motivation, it's important to remember that building atomic habits is a marathon, not a sprint.
It is.
So patience is really key, right?
It is absolutely crucial
Okay.
to embrace that long game and not get discouraged by slip-ups or slow progress.
Yeah.
Remember, the British cycling team, they didn't transform overnight.
Right.
It took them years of consistent effort to reach the top of their sport.
Right.
The same principle applies to our own personal growth.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's about showing up day after day,
Right.
making those small incremental improvements. Right.
Even when you don't see those immediate results.
Right. And that's so hard to do.
It is. It is.
Because we want to see those results.
We do. We do.
Right away.
Yeah. But it's a reminder that that lasting change, it takes time.
Right.
And it takes effort and a whole lot of patience.
You've summed it up perfectly. It's about embracing the process and trusting that those tiny, consistent actions
Yeah.
will compound over time and lead to remarkable results.
They will.
Yeah.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And it requires a shift in mindset from
Yeah.
instant gratification
Yeah.
to long-term growth.
Right. And that is so hard to do
It is. It is.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think we covered a lot of good stuff today.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm excited to pick up where we left off in our next deep dive.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Great.
Pizza. It's kind of remarkable how often we get so caught up in chasing those specific outcomes without really fully grasping the power of the process itself.
It's like we just want to get to the destination.
Right.
And we don't appreciate the journey along the way.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it really brings us back to that important distinction between goals and systems.
Right.
Goals are important for setting that direction.
Yeah.
But it's the system, the collection of daily habits and routines that truly propels us forward, that drives our progress.
The YouTube summary used a really interesting analogy to explain this, comparing habits to seeds in a garden.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's so fitting.
It is.
Each habit we plant, like a tiny seed,
Yeah.
needs that consistent nurturing,
Yeah.
We water it, we tend to the soil, we give it sunlight. And over time, it grows and flourishes.
Right.
Our habits, they require that same care and attention.
So I guess if you're working on a book, for example,
Right.
the goal would be to finish the manuscript.
Yeah.
But the system is that daily writing habit, that commitment to sitting down and writing every day.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's about focusing on those actions that are within our control.
Right.
Those consistent small steps that ultimately lead us to that desired outcome.
Right. So it's a shift from focusing on results to focusing on the process.
It's a process-oriented mindset.
And we talked earlier about how important identity is
Yes.
in habit formation.
Yes.
And the YouTube summary really emphasized that,
It did.
suggesting that it's not just about changing our actions.
Right.
It's about changing who we believe we are.
That's such a profound insight.
It is.
It's about recognizing that our habits are not just these isolated behaviors.
Right.
They're reflections of our self-image, our beliefs about who we are and what we're capable of.
It reminds me of that anecdote about the entrepreneur who struggled to stop biting his nails.
Oh, yeah. Classic example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he tried everything.
He did.
Nothing worked. But he finally realized that it wasn't just about changing the habit of biting his nails.
Right.
It was about changing his identity.
Exactly.
So he shifted his identity to someone who takes care of their nails.
Yes.
And he started getting manicures regularly, and the habit just went away.
It vanished, yeah.
Yeah.
It highlights that powerful connection between our self-image and our actions.
Right.
If we believe we're capable of change,
Yeah.
if we can see ourselves as the kind of person who embodies those habits that we desire,
Right.
we're far more likely to succeed.
So I guess a key takeaway here is that if you want to build lasting habits,
Yeah.
you need to start by believing that you're already the kind of person who does those things.
Yes.
It's about aligning your actions with that desired self-image.
That's it, precisely. And, it's a much more sustainable approach to change
Yeah.
than simply relying on, willpower or motivation, which can fluctuate so much.
Right. And this all kind of ties back to those systems and those tiny changes.
Yes.
It's like creating an ecosystem for growth,
Yeah.
both internally and externally,
Absolutely.
where those small actions gradually reshape not only our behaviors, but but our beliefs about ourselves.
Yeah, it is a beautiful concept,
Yeah.
and it suggests that we have far more agency over our lives than we often realize.
Right.
By consciously choosing our habits,
Yeah.
we're essentially choosing our future selves.
And that is very empowering.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a powerful reminder that we're not simply products of our circumstances.
Yeah.
We're architects of our own destinies, shaping our lives one small habit at a time.
And now let's get into some more practical strategies
Okay.
for putting this into action.
Right.
Because the YouTube summary also highlighted James Clear's 4 laws of behavior change.
Yes.
Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah, so let's break those down one by one,
Yeah.
starting with make it obvious.
Okay, so make it obvious is all about creating those clear cues in your environment that trigger that desired behavior.
Okay.
It's about removing that friction
Hmm.
and making the habit you want to build as visible and as accessible as possible.
So for someone who wants to drink more water,
Right.
that might look like keeping a full water bottle on their desk at all times.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay.
Or if you want to read more, you could place a book on your bedside table.
Right.
So it's the first thing you see when you wake up and the last thing you see before you go to sleep.
So just making it very obvious.
Make it obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about leveraging the power of those visual reminders
Right.
and those environmental cues to just kind of nudge ourselves in the right direction.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Good.
Now, what about make it attractive?
All right, so make it attractive involves making the habit, appealing to our senses, our emotions.
Right.
It's about associating those positive feelings and rewards with the behavior,
Okay.
making it something we look forward to rather than dread.
So
Mm.
if you're trying to start a meditation practice, that might look like creating a really calming space
Yeah,
with candles, soft music, a comfortable cushion.
absolutely. That's a great example.
Yeah.
Or if you're trying to make exercise more appealing, you could, find an activity that you genuinely enjoy, whether it's dancing, hiking, playing a sport.
Right.
It's about framing that habit as something pleasurable, something rewarding, rather than a chore or an obligation.
So you're tapping into your intrinsic motivation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finding ways to make the habit itself the reward.
Okay, and that brings us to make it easy.
Yes.
The third law of behavior change.
All right, so make it easy is all about reducing that friction associated with the habit, making it as simple as possible to perform.
Yeah, because sometimes that's the biggest hurdle.
It is.
It's just getting started.
Yeah, so this might involve, breaking the habit down into smaller steps,
Okay.
preparing your environment in advance,
Okay.
or using tools and technology to automate certain aspects of the habit.
Can you give me a concrete example of what that might look like?
Sure. Let's say you want to start a morning routine that includes, exercise, meditation, and journaling.
Right.
You could lay out your workout clothes and, prepare your breakfast the night before.
Okay.
You could set up your meditation cushion and journal in a designated space.
Okay.
Removing any barriers that might prevent you from following through.
So you're just kind of eliminating those decision points.
Exactly.
And minimizing the effort required
You got it.
to engage in the habit.
That's it.
Okay, and finally, make it satisfying.
Ah, yes. So make it satisfying is all about ensuring that the habit provides some form of immediate reward.
Okay.
Even if those long-term benefits are delayed,
Right.
this could involve using a habit tracker to visually monitor your progress,
Okay.
rewarding yourself with small treats or
Yeah.
activities you enjoy, or simply acknowledging and savoring those positive feelings
Right.
that come from performing the habit.
So for someone trying to eat healthier,
Yeah.
that might look like keeping a food journal and tracking their progress.
Yes.
Or preparing a delicious, nutritious meal.
Absolutely, yeah. It's about finding ways to make the habit itself enjoyable and rewarding,
Right.
reinforcing those positive associations that make it more likely to stick.
So you're turning those habits you want to build into something you crave
Yeah.
rather than something you resist.
Exactly. You're harnessing the power of positive reinforcement
Yeah.
to create sustainable change.
And speaking of reinforcement,
Yes.
let's go back to that study at Mass General Hospital
Oh, yeah.
where they rearranged the cafeteria.
Yeah, I love that study.
They just made the healthier choices more visible
Yeah.
and accessible
Uh-huh.
without any direct persuasion.
Right.
What happened?
Well, the results were astounding. People naturally gravitated toward those healthier options.
Okay.
Simply because they were more readily available
Right.
and presented in a more appealing way.
It's amazing
Yeah.
how much our surroundings can influence our choices without us even realizing it.
It really is. And, it suggests that we're not always as rational
Right.
and in control of our decisions as we like to believe.
It's like we're on autopilot sometimes.
We are. We
We
are.
don't even realize it.
So it's a reminder to be mindful of those cues and triggers
Right.
that are present in our environment
Yeah.
and to actively design our spaces in a way that supports our desired habits.
Right. Like, are there tempting foods readily available on the counter?
Right. Exactly.
Is your phone constantly buzzing with notifications?
Yeah. It's like our environment can either be our biggest ally or our greatest saboteur
That's a good way to put it.
when it comes to building those positive habits. Yeah.
So, by taking control of our surroundings,
Yes.
we can actually create that ecosystem for growth,
That's right.
where those positive choices become the easier option.
It's about setting ourselves up for success,
Yeah.
making those habits we desire the default option.
Right, rather than something you constantly have to fight for.
That's it, precisely.
And while we're on the topic of environmental design,
Yeah.
the YouTube summary also mentioned choice architecture,
Yes, choice architecture.
which I thought was so interesting.
It is.
Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. So choice architecture basically recognizes that even subtle changes in the way choices are presented to us
Okay.
can have a significant impact on our decisions.
So it's not just about what choices are available, but how they're presented
Exactly.
to us.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're trying to save more money,
Okay.
you could set up automatic transfers to your savings account each month.
Okay.
This way, you're not even tempted to spend the money because it's already been allocated.
So you're kind of taking the decision out of it
You're taking it out of it.
and just making the desired behavior the default.
The default, that's it.
Okay.
Or if you're trying to, eat healthier, you could place fruits and vegetables at eye level in your refrigerator,
Okay.
making them the most visible and accessible option.
Right. So you're just kind of nudging yourself in the right direction.
Nudging yourself.
Yeah.
That's
By
a-
strategically designing your environment.
Exactly.
That is fascinating to me.
It is.
That just these little tweaks in the way choices are presented
Yeah.
can make such a big impact.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we're playing a game of behavioral economics with ourselves,
Yeah.
using these subtle nudges to kind of steer ourselves towards those choices
Right.
that align with our aspirations.
And building lasting habits is a journey, not a destination.
It is. It is.
So you have to embrace the process.
Absolutely.
There are going to be ups and downs along the way.
There will be.
There'll be days when we're really good at following our habits. And there
Mhm.
are going to be days when we fall short.
Absolutely. And, the key is to approach this with a sense of patience
Right?
and self-compassion,
Yeah.
recognizing that those setbacks are not failures.
Right.
They're simply opportunities for learning and growth.
So it's not about being perfect.
No.
It's about making progress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about celebrating those small wins, learning from our mistakes,
Yeah.
and just continuing to show up even when we don't feel like it.
Right. And that's the hardest part,
It is. It is.
is showing up when you don't feel like it.
Yeah. But it's about trusting that process.
Yeah.
Knowing that those tiny, consistent actions
Right.
will compound over time
Yeah.
and lead to those remarkable results.
Right. And it is a journey.
It is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
And it requires us to kind of shift our mindset from that need for instant gratification
Right.
to one of long-term growth.
And I think that's the hardest part for people.
I think so too.
Yeah. But I think you've done a great job explaining it.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I think that's a good place to wrap up for today.
Okay.
We've covered a lot.
We have.
Yeah.
Great.
And I'm excited to continue this conversation
All right.
in our next deep dive.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay, take care.
It's funny how we often think of habits as these rigid, restrictive things.
Yeah, like we're going to turn into robots.
Right. Just mindlessly following a set of rules.
Exactly.
But the YouTube summary had a very different take on that,
Okay.
suggesting that habits can actually be a pathway to greater freedom.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
so?
Well, think about it this way. When you have those good habits in place,
Yeah.
the actions that support your goals and your values,
Right.
it actually frees up so much mental energy
Oh, okay.
that you would otherwise be spending on making decisions or resisting temptations.
It was like putting those things on autopilot,
Exactly.
freeing up our minds for other things.
Yeah, it's like having a mental autopilot for those essential things
Yeah.
that you do automatically,
Yeah.
allowing your conscious mind to focus on other things.
Okay.
The things that really matter, the things that bring you joy, purpose, fulfillment.
I love that analogy.
It's like having a personal assistant
Right.
who takes care of all those mundane tasks,
Exactly.
leaving you free to pursue your passions
Exactly.
and explore your creativity.
Right. So the more good habits you build,
Yeah,
the more freedom you create in your life.
precisely. Good habits create more freedom.
It's like a positive feedback loop.
It is, which allows us to invest our energy
Yeah.
in building even better habits,
Yeah.
leading to this upward spiral of growth and positive change.
That's so cool.
It is.
It's like those small daily actions can have a huge impact
Yeah,
on your overall sense of freedom and well-being.
absolutely.
And the YouTube summary also touched on the neuroscience
Okay,
behind habit formation,
right.
how these behaviors actually get ingrained in our brains.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by how our brains work,
Me too.
especially when it comes to learning and behavior change.
Yeah, our brains are these incredibly complex and efficient machines.
You know, constantly looking for ways to conserve energy and automate those processes.
And habits are a perfect example of that.
Exactly.
That efficiency in action.
Habits allow our brains to, delegate those frequently repeated actions to a sort of autopilot mode, freeing up that conscious processing power
Right.
for other tasks.
So every time we repeat a behavior,
Uh-huh.
the neural pathways in our brains
Yeah.
that are associated with that action
Yes.
get stronger,
Yes.
making it easier and more automatic over time.
That's a great way to visualize it, like carving a path through a dense forest.
Yeah.
The more you walk that path, the clearer and more defined it becomes,
And eventually you can walk that path without even thinking about it.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's how habits become, ingrained in our neural circuitry,
Right.
shaping our behaviors, influencing our actions, even when we're not consciously aware of it.
And that's why breaking bad habits can be so hard,
It is.
because you're trying to forge a new path.
It's like trying to forge a new path through that dense forest.
Right.
It takes conscious effort,
Right.
consistent repetition, a willingness to kind of navigate that unfamiliar terrain.
Right. But the good news is that our brains can change.
They can. They're incredibly adaptable, constantly rewiring themselves based on our experiences and actions.
And that's called neuroplasticity.
That's it, neuroplasticity. You got it.
So even though those old neural pathways are still there,
Yeah,
we can weaken them by consciously choosing to create new ones
that's right.
that support our desired behaviors.
It's not about erasing those old pathways completely.
Okay.
It's more about, creating new, more desirable routes for our brains to follow.
Like building a bridge over a ravine,
Exactly.
so you don't have to go through the rough terrain anymore.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Once that bridge is strong and stable,
Yeah.
you no longer need to navigate that treacherous terrain below.
So we really do have the power to reshape our brains
We do.
and rewire our habits through conscious effort and consistent practice.
We absolutely do.
And going back to the importance of environment and habit formation,
Yes.
the YouTube summary emphasized that it's not just about internal motivation and willpower.
It's not.
It's about the external cues and triggers that surround us.
Absolutely. And we talked earlier about that fascinating study at Mass General Hospital where
Right.
they rearranged the cafeteria, making those healthier choices more visible and accessible.
Right. And it's amazing how much that actually worked.
It is, it just shows how much our environment can shape our choices often without us realizing it.
Yeah, it's like we're not always as rational as we think.
I think we're much less rational than we realize,
Yeah.
So it's a reminder to be mindful of those subtle environmental cues
Right.
that influence our behavior.
Right.
And to actively design our spaces in a way that supports our desired habits.
So if you're trying to exercise more regularly, put your workout clothes where you can see them.
Exactly. Or if you're trying to, reduce that mindless snacking,
Yeah.
you might, remove those tempting treats from the kitchen counter.
Right.
Replace them with healthier options like fruit or nuts.
Make it easy.
Make it easy. You got it.
Yeah, create an environment that makes it easier to make those good choices.
Exactly.
Align your actions with your intentions.
That's right.
And the YouTube summary also mentioned choice architecture,
Ah, yes, choice architecture.
which I thought was a fascinating concept.
It is a fascinating concept. It basically explores how the way choices are presented to us
Right.
can influence our decisions.
We're not always making choices in a vacuum.
Right.
We're influenced by how those choices are framed or presented.
Exactly.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, let's say you're at a restaurant
Okay.
and you're trying to decide, between a healthy salad and a more indulgent pasta dish.
Okay.
If the menu highlights the salad as the chef's special,
Right.
or positions it more prominently on the page, you might be more inclined to choose that option.
So just like a little nudge.
It's a nudge
Yeah.
in the right direction.
Without limiting your freedom to choose.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we don't always make perfectly rational decisions.
We don't.
No, and that our choices are often influenced by those factors beyond our conscious awareness.
So if we understand these principles,
Yeah.
we can actually design our environment to support our goals and values.
Absolutely.
It's like we're playing a game of behavioral economics with ourselves.
We are.
Yeah, to steer ourselves towards those choices that align with our aspirations.
I love it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into atomic habits,
Yeah.
I think the big takeaway is that building lasting change takes time and effort
It does.
and patience.
A lot of patience.
So embrace the journey.
Yes.
There are going to be ups and downs.
Yeah, right,
There will
yeah.
be days when you nail your habits
Yeah.
and days when you just completely fall short.
I-
But approach the whole process with self-compassion
Yes.
and a willingness to learn from those experiences.
You got it. It's not about striving for perfection. It's about making progress.
Right. One step at a time.
One step at a time.
Celebrate those small wins.
Yes.
Learn from your mistakes
Absolutely.
and just keep showing up.
Keep showing up.
Even when you don't feel like it.
That's often the hardest part, but it's the most important part.
And just trust the process.
Yes.
Those tiny, consistent actions will add up over time.
It will.
Leading to those remarkable results.
They will.
Yeah. And sometimes the most important step is just showing up
Absolutely.
when you're tired,
Yeah.
when you're discouraged,
Yeah.
when you don't feel like it.
That's a victory in itself.
It's a commitment.
It is.
It's saying, I believe in myself.
Yes.
I believe in this process.
Yes.
And
you don't have to go through this journey alone.
that's right.
Find your tribe, your community of support.
Yeah, find those people that will cheer you on,
Yes.
hold you accountable, remind you of your potential.
That's it.
So what's that small habit that you're going to focus on today?
Yeah. Think about that.
What tiny change will you make that will make a big difference a year from now?
Good question.
Choose it, commit to it, and embrace the journey, knowing that you have the power to create the life you desire, one small habit at a time.
I love it.
I think that's a good place to wrap up our deep dive
Okay.
into atomic habits.
Good.
We talked about the power of those tiny changes,
Yes.
the importance of systems, the role of identity,
Uh-huh.
the neuroscience behind habit formation.
Yeah, it was a good deep dive.
I really enjoyed it.
Good.
I hope everyone listening got something out of it too.
I hope so too.
And remember those small, consistent actions, those seemingly insignificant choices, they can shape our lives
They can.
in amazing ways.
They really can.
So keep learning, keep growing, keep experimenting, and never stop exploring the incredible potential that lies within you.
Well said.
Until next time, keep diving.
Keep diving.